Welcome to Tokunbo. My name is Jola Naibi, and in this limited podcast series, I'll be having conversations with Nigerian storytellers living in the diaspora. We will talk about the stories they tell, the way the stories are told, the way the stories are received, and so much more. Welcome to Tokunbo.
But the story itself is based on, or the entire book is based on experiences I've had, on places I know. My father's advice never left me. Write about things you know of.
Yeah.
But then because I've mastered in my own way, up to now, I'm still learning how to write about things I know of. I've then learned that what I do know is the human condition. And the human condition can be in any place.
That was Leye Adenle, and he's my guest on this week's episode of Tokunbo. So we started. Welcome, Leye Adenle, to the podcast. It's really nice to meet you. One of the things I always try to start the podcast by doing my research and then figuring out who I'm talking to. I've read all the 3 books, but in looking at your profile, it says writer, coach, and human being. And I like that, those 3 descriptions. But I also like to start these conversations by getting my guests to talk about their origin story as a writer. And you have one of the more fascinating stories that I've come across. You're from a family of storytellers, and you can trace that as far back as one of your ancestors, Oba Adenle of the first of Osogbo. At what point in your life did you become aware of this interesting forebear, and how do you think it influenced you in terms of your decision to become a writer?
Wow, that's such a great question.
Yeah.
No one I've been asked before. So I'm named after my paternal grandfather, Leye Adenle the First. He was the Atauja of Osogbo, but before then, he was a school teacher, a school proprietor, and then he married into money. His wife basically made him rich. He married into a trading family, and then he was a trader. He became extremely wealthy during his lifetime. Again, it was made by his wife. I'm named Babatunde, which in Yoruba means, the return of the father or something to that extent. So as you can imagine, I did not meet him. I never met him. I was born months after he died, which is why I was named
Babatunde. Mm-hmm.
Yes, so I'm Leye Adenle the Second. When he was, before he became king, he wrote 2 books, 2 didactic poems in Yoruba. Being a Christian convert, being someone who turned against the religion, the beautiful religion of his own people.
We can talk about that for hours.
Well, he wrote he wrote these books, like they were didactic poems. He was following the Yoruba storytelling traditional, or one of the forms of storytelling, which is always a morality tale.
Yes.
But what he then did is he structured it like stanzas.
Okay.
So it can be sung as a hymn.
Okay.
And after his death, long after his death, the Osogbo, the choir at All Saints Church, I understand, in Osogbo, actually, I don't remember if that's the name of the church. Anyway, they sang it. Yeah, I haven't heard it, but apparently this was done in his honor. He founded schools, like the Adenle Grammar School is still there, which was his school, eventually handed over to government and stuff like that. Now, I have always been aware of him, because they wouldn't let me forget that I was named after him, and I am Babatunde. And they had amazing stories about me. I am a totally non-superstitious person, so I know that the stories are stories. But all the people who knew me as a child, my father's siblings, my mom, who's also a scientist, so my father, who's medical doctor, uh,
Mm-hmm.
all the cousins, all the older people, my nanny, who ended up becoming my aunt because she married my mom's cousin,
Mm.
which makes you wonder what she was doing when she should have been looking after me.
Ah.
Anyway,
That's funny.
that's one for my therapist.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, they all swear that, I started speaking very early, forming full sentences. And apparently it started with my grandmother, the queen. So my grandfather's first wife,
Mm-hmm.
we like to call his original wife,
Mm.
would basically take me from my mom as a baby, as a newborn child,
Mhm.
and just have conversations in her room with me behind closed doors, and people would hear her talking, and they feared that she was losing her mind. But
Mm. Mm.
she claimed that Leye was, I'm having conversations with Leye, and nobody believed her. And the story goes that I started surprising people by speaking to them.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm telling this story because there was no way I wasn't aware of him growing up.
Mm. Mm.
So one of the beautiful stories told by my mom, again, a scientist,
Mm-hmm.
in those days, we used to stay. My mother had an official residence in Queen's School, Ibadan, because she was a principal. So we would spend the week in the school because of transport. Driving in those days wasn't the easiest thing. We didn't have all the roads and all of that. So the children would spend and mom would spend the weekends, the weekdays in school on campus, and then weekends we would spend in town in Bodija with my father and my other siblings, my half siblings.
Okay.
Um, so the story goes, Auntie Fatima had me on her back. That's my nanny, and I
Mm-hmm.
was weeks old. And then a lady came to the house looking for my mom. And she asked Auntie Fatima, where is Sisi Diola? Sisi Diola being, Madame Diola or whatever, it was just the way they would speak in those days. And then apparently, or the story goes, I responded from Auntie Fatima's back. You know the way we carry children
Yeah,
on.
of course, of course. You don't have to explain all that to me. I
Yeah.
understand. Yeah.
I still think that's the best way to carry someone. That's close,
Honestly, I
that's
agree.
holding, touching anyway.
Yeah.
Um, So I answered saying, "What's in your staff room?" And the woman was like, "Who just spoke?" And Auntie
Mm.
Fatima was like, "Omotimogbe saying it's this child that I'm
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
backing, is strapped to my back." And the woman was like, "Which child?" Well, Leye that they just gave birth to. And then the woman had to
Mm-hmm.
check herself that is it him? And then she ran all the way to the staff room, and she burst into the staff room screaming, Sisi Diola's son is speaking, Sisi Diola's son is speaking, a baby is speaking. And then my mother said she was at the back of the room. And when this woman burst in shouting, Sisi Diola's baby is speaking, my
Mm-hmm.
mom said she just tried to hide away that this silly boy has embarrassed me again. And then
Mm-hmm.
another lady next to her, another teacher, I don't know, then said to her, noticed her shrinking away and hiding, and said, Diola, is your son a Babatunde? And my
Oh.
mother said yes. And then the lady said, don't worry, that's how they behave. I have one as well. It will
Oh.
fade away. And the reason I choose that story to tell is the annoyance I feel towards that woman saying that my exceptional gift will fade
Yeah.
away. But it surely did, or they were all conspiring to make me feel that these things happen because I remember speaking as a baby. Another story is when my mom told my dad, when everybody was telling my dad, and then my mom said, yeah, my father asked her, do you believe all this bullshit? And I said, well, yeah, he was actually speaking. And the man told her off that you, an educated woman, a scientist,
I believe in that superstitious.
Like, how can you? I mean,
Yeah.
my father would tell you, it's the first atheist I ever met. He would tell you how there's no juju, so that's why I don't believe in juju. We read the Bible and the Quran, and we studied religions of Asia Minor and all of that.
Wow.
And I understood religion to be a cultural thing. Well, anyway, that's not what we're talking about. So we're at the breakfast table. We're having, the rest of the family is having ogianakara. God, I miss that.
Me
They're
too.
having,
And we're going to get into that.
yeah, they're having
diaspora blues.
oh, damn. They're having ogianakara. Even when you go back to Nigeria these days, you're like, cornflakes, you're poisoning yourself.
Oh,
Have
golden
food.
golden
Like, damn. So we're having ogianakara, and Leye, who's a baby, Omowo. So I'm reaching out for the akara. And, at some point, someone's like, well, if he wants to, let him try. Like, just put a piece in his mouth. So to teach him, not for you. And the story goes, Mom puts it in my mouth, and I go, Ota. And at that point, my father, the scientifically minded Harvard grad medical doctor, gets up and prostrates in front of me. I know the funny thing. So I grew up all my life being called Baba. My father and my mom met. They don't want to admit it, but their parents set them up. They think it was up to them, but yeah, they were set up. So Baba and my grandfather and my mom's father were very close friends. Right? So my grandfather on my mother's side, who should also have become king in his own place in Ede, but because he was a reverend, allowed his younger brother to be king, was friends with my father, who was a staunch Christian, right? So with my grandfather, who was like proper, he drank the whole Kool-Aid, man, proper Christian, right? So they were friends. So growing up, ever since I can remember, my maternal grandfather would talk to me, Ese Baba. I never understood what it meant, but it was Samuel Adenle, my grandfather's, the king's initials. And my uncles would say the same thing, and they would all tease me and beg me to, talk to them, whatever. And also my father's siblings, anytime I would see any of these old people, they would bend down in front of me, half bending, greeting their father first. I used to feel so cool, like, look at
I know, because you're the reincarnation of the king, They
were like,
put some respect on that name.
Baba and Kinyo, our Moinio, and then after they've greeted their father, they will now say, Leye Baoni.
That is so interesting. Oh my goodness.
I didn't milk it enough. I should have milked it. Anyway, so long story short, I was aware of my grandfather. I was aware of the fact that I was, in the eyes of his children, his family, and people around me, I was his reincarnation, culturally by name, and they also thought in other ways. And I knew he was a writer. And then I was surrounded by books. Our library was a whole bedroom.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In my home in Bodija, it was a bedroom. That was the library, right? In my maternal grandparents' house, my grandfather they didn't have a separate room, but they had this big, huge, tons of books. In fact, I stole my very first copy, or my only copy, of the complete works of Shakespeare from that.
Whoa!
Yeah. So I'm surrounded by books growing up. In those days, luckily, we didn't have the internet. And if you would ask my parents, like all parents, well, we have to grow up until we then realize the amazing privilege in which we were brought up. But anyway, we were lucky. And if you asked my parents any question, maybe it's about something you saw in a cartoon, in a movie or school or whatever, rather than tell you the answer, fully well they know. They'll tell you which encyclopedia, this encyclopedia, blah, blah, blah. Oh, go and look at that encyclopedia.
Yeah,
That
you discover it
encyclopedia is the
yourself.
one. You have to, and then you have to come and tell them what
What you
you learned,
discovered.
right?
And then I had those as well. Then it catalyzes
Yeah.
a conversation, and then you have a discussion.
There you go. But I found a way out. So anytime I've had to ask them some, maybe I've forgotten, like, Daddy, what is the word for? I remember once, what's the word for someone that studies insects? The word was on the tip of my tongue, but I couldn't remember, and I knew we'd spoken about it. So it would send you to the library to go and discover it. Come and tell me what you learned. So my trick used to be, once that happens, I know there's a window after which they forget. So you go into the library and you hide in the library.
Nice hack.
And then you're just reading other books, man. You're just looking for what looks interesting, and then you just sit there. And then yeah, and then my father then left. He was a serial businessman. He then left medicine.
Okay.
He was the first African head of Jaja Clinic in Ibadan.
Okay.
And just before he was to become the is he provost of UCH, or what do they call it?
Okay.
Whatever. He went into his own private practice, Bodija Clinic. So as a child, I remember congregations of the first time I ever saw Wole Soyinka. I can't remember fully, but apparently it was in my father's clinic at night, and it was all these notable people. They were younger and they all had beards and they were all drinking beer. And in my head as a child, I thought, oh, people that drink beer have beards. I made that connection.
Oh my goodness, that's too funny.
So he stopped the printing press, the medical practice, his own private practice, and then went and started a publishing and printing press.
What?
So
what was that one called?
Le Sheradin.
Okay.
It was called Le Sheradin.
Okay.
And we had, apart from books he published, mostly, non-fiction, like for his good dear friend, Professor Aboyade and people like that. But he also printed a lot of books on contract from people like the University Press Limited, for UI itself. So we ended up printing a lot of books that were either a lot of, real textbooks. Some of my textbooks in school that people had to buy, I just took off just copies.
The printing press. I understand. My goodness.
But then he also got to print a whole ton of, other classics.
Okay.
And one of the ones that really stuck with me, and I think that is when I must have become a writer. Being surrounded by books, we always try to write. Having a printing press as a family business,
the sky's the limit.
Off cuts of paper, and we would go there. We would jump into heaps of paper in the bulletin room where they cut the books to shape. There'll be tons of off cuts that people would come and take to use for whatever they use it for. But when it's heaped up, thinking back now, it was probably a few feet off the ground, but to me, it used to look like a mountain.
But as a kid, everything is much bigger. Yeah,
I would jump into it and we'll play with it, and then once in a while, the workers would then create for us using the offcuts a jotter note. They would glue the side of it or they'll staple it. So we had jotters, which they probably did that to just, hey, these kids, okay, let's give them something to play with. Yeah. But that was the beginning of my writing. I would always try and write a book. Then I read, what's his name? Robinson Crusoe. Is it Robinson Crusoe?
Sometimes people mix
Man Friday,
Gulliver's Travels and Robinson Crusoe. A lot of people mix them up. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Robinson Crusoe, the one that turned out to be quite racist, but you don't know that when you were a kid.
Yeah, because you're just reading the stories. You don't realize that some of them are not serving.
And it's blighted.
Yeah.
And it's blighted. I'm like,
yeah, I know, right? Oh gosh.
But anyway, So I just started writing, trying to write an entire book, always writing in the back of notebooks, always trying to write a novel. It felt like an impossible task. But then I was writing short stories. And one day I would be writing, instead of walking, doing my schoolwork, I'll be writing short stories. An entire notebook will be full of short stories Leye has written. One day, I'll never forget, my father is holding one of those notebooks. And he says, Leye, did you write this? And I swear, I was about to lie to him that it's not me. I'm thinking, oh, it's only the title on the front. There's not my name. Let me lie. Like a child. I thought I was in trouble.
I thought you were in trouble.
He's like, and he basically stopped me like, it's okay. I read them, and I just want to say that you should write about things you know about. Why? Because I was writing, what was I reading? All the literature I was reading, most of the literature I was reading was the meal on the floors, the Igbo books. Even the adult ones were James Hadley Chase and stuff like that. So I was writing a Nigerian boy who had never left the shores of Nigeria, right? I was writing stories set in Knightsbridge with people like Willoughby and Smith and, and that single thing that my dad said to me did two things for me. I know my father. I know him quite well. If he thought he was rubbish, he would have spent weeks teaching me how to write, right? That kind of just saying, hey, I read them, write about things you know about, was validation for me. Like, oh, it's okay to write. Okay. And also, a penny dropped. Why am I writing? I'm trying to copy the things I've read. Why don't I write about moi? It was not long after that, and I really think it was one that even got me to read it. Not directly, but I read the Palm Wine Drinkard, and that was just like, boof.
I know. I mean, that's such a seminal book, and it's funny. I mean, you touch on so many points, but I think the most important thing is the way. I think it's the way we're raised with the under the shadow of colonization, and we think that the only things that we can write about are things that are a reflection of the colonizer. And but I mean, definitely, you have a rich, colorful origin story that, and we're all the better for it. Because you were rewarded by, I mean, your most popular and celebrated work is the Amaka Mbadiwe series. One of the things I really liked about it is, and in an interview you mentioned this, you said that the fact that people are always saying that women are strong is actually an insult.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because what are we supposed to be meek? So on behalf of everyone, I say thank you for putting that out into the universe. But Amaka Mbadiwe, I read somewhere, or I listened to an interview that you said is a composite of the women in your life, and you said that your mom was a strong influence on the character. Tell me about that.
So I always believed, and truthfully, I believed that Amaka was just a composite character. She takes her name from a dear, dear friend of mine called Amaka. She takes a very significant part of her backstory from another dear friend from UI, a friend's younger sister, who, when you meet someone years later, that you can't even remember them, but you're just aware of them as a kid, as one of the kids in this people's house. And they now share things with you that was going on with them then that you were unaware of. And you're like, what? And I just thought, nah, we need to talk about this. We need to show this, in some way. She took her face from an imaginary friend of mine. We're not friends. I don't know them personally. I've seen them up close, but I've not spoken to them. Genevieve Nanji. That was the face and the voice in my head as I wrote the book.
That's an interesting creative process.
Well, it's rather than create one in your head, just steal one.
That's true.
Yeah, so that was the person I was looking at. And then she takes aspects of a mannerism. Her Najite Dede is the character. That's another dear friend. Don't mess with the girls, And I really believed that this person was just this composite character. Until one day at a book festival in France, a lady asked me from the audience, who's Amaka based upon? And I gave this spiel, about this composite character, da, 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 da. Later on outside, I've signed books, but sometimes people will come and meet you even after you've left the stage, right? So people are around me, I'm talking to someone, I'm signing book for someone, and then I noticed the same woman who asked me in that room, like pointedly. And she asked me in English. So everybody else is asking me questions in French, and I only have primary school French. So people are but she asked me in English. And then she walks up to this group of people around me, and I notice her. And then she waits, and when there's a break, she says, "Where's your mother in this book?" And God damn, it was like having a breakthrough in a therapy session.
Wow.
It just hit me. Boom. God damn. I was writing about Mrs. Adenle all along. It was like a ton of bricks. I'm like, damn. And before then, when I would say to people, when they'll tell me about strong women, and I hate that term, like, show me the weak women.
Yeah,
I always say that, look, I grew up with people like my mom, my sisters, I grew up with friends, blah, blah, blah. And I would always talk about what my mom did, part of the job she did, but I never put the connection in my head. Amaka looks out for women. My mom, when she was, Director General Women's Affairs in Oyo State, before they created the Osun State.
Okay.
So all of that region, she wasn't just a civil servant that just sits in her office. She would go on visits unannounced to all those schools in the interlands where there was no road, right? She didn't have to. Her predecessors apparently had other people that would do this stuff for them. But she was extremely interested in the education of these people.
Okay, good.
Firsthand. So she'll go and just surprise people. Sometimes they won't even know who she is. They'll think she's like a parent, or they sent her, and she'll find out stuff and she'll directly intervene. Now, one story I heard before I even saw, I heard stories about how specifically women, anything that had to do with women, boom, my mom she's involved, she's sorting it out, she's dealing with it, she's making sure they get what they need, she's making sure they get the education, they're not bullied in school, they're not harassed in school, she's getting people that are doing the harassments sorted.
That's good. We need more people like that.
And you would look at my mom and you'd think, I mean, this is a woman that's never once smacked me. But man, she tells you to do something, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Without raising her voice, without doing anything like that. I mean, when you see us talking till today, at like 80 or thereabouts, we're still discussing high concepts, and she's telling us, I'm discovering new things about her. I'm discovering, I presented a paper at this place. Oh, when I was in Aburi, when we're in Ghana and we're in I'm still discovering all this shit about her, right, till today. So anyway, so I knew that she was always involved when it comes to, education and women especially. So after that, she was Director General Education, PAMSEC Education, then Director General Women's Affairs. Now, one day in UI, there was this lady that I hope, I pray to God I find her again. I've forgotten her name. But there was this lady who at some point was part of, the collective, the people we all hung out together. And then one after, so we had a boys' quarter. My good friend Guillaume and I, we had this boys' quarter. And people used to just fall into our boys' quarter. It was the lovely Zebai's Professor and late Professor Mrs. Zebai's house. And they gave us this boys' quarter to stay in because we're friends with the children. God bless that woman and that family forever. So we had friends who would come in, and then this lady just became one of the friends. And it was this afternoon, one of those between lectures, we're back in the room, we're chilling, we're all lying when we just had our mattresses on the floor. I thought it was cooler. Thinking back now, damn, we should have had proper bed so that we have under that bed to store stuff.
Yeah, I know, but I get, yeah.
This lady is watching me, she's looking at me funny. And then you're thinking, did I fart or something? Like, what the fuck? And then she says, Leye, do you know Mrs. Jola Naibi? I'm like, that's my mom. And she just starts crying.
Oh.
And then she tells me this incredible story of what happened to her in school. I don't have the permission to share the story, but it was terrible. She was not in the wrong. Other people were. And this somehow, I don't even think she knows how it got to my mom. My mom left everything, went to the school, found everyone involved, got to the bottom of that thing, made sure she did not miss out on her education, sorted it out. When she told me this story with tears in her eyes, I just thought, you know, when you look at your parents in a different way.
Yeah, I know. There's so much you don't know about them.
I'm like, this soft-spoken woman that can't even hurt a fly. Yeah, but she's Amaka. The only thing is, unlike Amaka, Amaka can be nasty. You know?
Yeah, I know. I like what you said about the discussions that you have with your mom and your siblings, because I understand that it was from one of those discussions that the very first book came about,
Absolutely.
Forest. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Oh, it was in my brother's house. In fact, we were with my mom again and my brothers and my sister-in-law and other family, having similar discussions on other stuff. We were discussing cultural relativity in, we're discussing religion, but academically, not in other ways. What else did we discuss? We discussed feminism, without necessarily saying we're discussing feminism.
Because everybody likes to give a label to something, everything.
Yeah. You know, we had this amazing spirited debates about everything. And we also discussed the efficacy of commercial treatments. I remember this. We talked about how Oyibo medicine is just poisoning us. Oh, she was particularly worried that the Nigerian government has approved GMO. You know, and so I just allowed that to educate me on it. You know, I didn't say to her, okay, mom, I know about those things. But explaining how the problem with this thing is that these people, when they plant their corn now, is going to just contaminate the rest of the blah, blah, blah. And the corn will not do this, and that this is what they're doing. And she was giving, you know, quite excited. She was quite, you know, onto it. But anyway, so when we meet like this, we have this kind of an interesting anecdote. So she said to me, I can't remember what, but this was just this last Christmas. She now talked about a paper she delivered once when she was a lot younger, though, like in her 20s or whatever. And it was about color. And that she said to people like, look at that chalkboard. Look at my skin. Am I black like that chalkboard? And then she turned to a white lady, one of his fellow teachers, and say, look at her skin and look at this chalk.
I love that.
There's a greater, you know, context to it, but I'm like, wow, you did that. Okay.
I wonder how that was. I'd pay good money to be on a flyer on the wall to hear the reactions to people. Seriously,
I'm telling you, like in those days, you know.
Yes, I know. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Anyway, so this particular time, many years ago now, we were talking about how we grew up in Ibadan, and on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, you would find dead bodies, mostly young ladies, mostly undressed. And people just assumed they were sex workers, as if somehow that profession made it okay for them to be, you know, victims of such cruelty.
Mm.
You know, I mean, that's the most deadly kind of victim blaming ever.
Yeah.
And once they label them sex workers in a country where sex work is looked down, adult work is looked down upon, it's not regulated, it's not protected, it's criminalized actually, right? Which is a shame. Almost as if, well, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know.
They're lesser human beings, almost as if.
Almost as if, you know, which explains why people still tolerate lynchings. Like, oh, someone stole something in the market and you lynch them? And then sometimes you find out the police were around and they did nothing.
Yeah. And
Femi,
go ahead.
Femi Kayode wrote an entire book about this. That's a crime writer, a Nigerian crime writer. Everybody needs to get in.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
I was reading this man thinking, yes.
Yeah. Are you friends with him?
Oh yeah, I read his first.
Yeah.
I read his manuscripts before they became books.
Okay, good. I'm glad that there's that connection, because both you and Femi are kind of like the two crime writers that I've read their work. In fact, your last book, Unfinished Business, and his, there's kind of some similarity in the topic.
In the topic, yeah.
Yeah.
I told him when he gave me the manuscript for Light Seekers, I'm like, damn, I'm actually writing something.
Yeah. But it's good that you're shedding the light on that. And one of the things I liked about what you said about Easy Motion Tourist, following this lively discussion that you had with your mom and family members, was that you actually wrote it for your Facebook friends, which I think is pretty neat.
Yeah, I got an idea, like maybe because what we were discussing that day was how to stop it. How can I mean? Again, you know, nurture the way we were brought up. My mom, I was aware of, thought about the droughts that some areas would encounter, and wrote a whole. She went and did her own study. She did chemistry. She went and did her own study, and she wrote recommendations for rainwater capture. You know, for the government. You know, anyway, so we were brought up in a culture of you can do anything. Yeah. You know, you can do it. So we were not just discussing it. We're thinking, how can we stop this? So we're talking about so many things. I remember I kept harping on about decriminalization. Even if you're not going to legitimize it, decriminalize it so that the police who are supposed to look after everybody in the society are not also preying on these women.
Exactly.
So that the clients do not take advantage of, well, I'm going to rob you. Who are you going to report me to? Yeah. So, I mean, the protections that they require need to be given by the government. One of the things I remember quite vividly that attracted me to Easy Motion Tourist was the title, because it's a nod to a song made popular by Fatai Rolling Dollar. Yeah, and the Harbour's Band. Yes. Yeah. How did that come about, and what does that? How the title of the book? At what point did you make a decision to? Okay, so originally the first title was Amaka. Okay. Simple, wow. But then my publisher pointed out that according to them, my audience is not just Nigeria, and a lot of people will know what Amaka means. I do regret not, stamping my foot on the ground and throwing a hissy that's because I wish that was the title of the first book. But anyway, so I kind of saw there. I still see that the points they had. So I had to come up with a different title. So I thought, 48 hours in Lagos. Why? Because the entire story happens in 48 hours, in 2 days. Right? I like tight stories like that. In fact, if there's any thriller writer out there, one of the ways you can create tension is by confining the space in which everything happens. Yeah. So imagine writing a 80,000 word manuscript of things that happened just in a day or two. That's action packed, man. That's boom, 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 boom. You don't have space to just assume your reader would, be interested in the in your amazing mastery of the English language. Through that. Yes. Show us what's happening, Yes. Anyway, so 48 Hours in Lagos was not accepted because it sounded too much like another 48 Hours, Eddie Murphy. I understood that. And then I was at work. I was actually at work that day, and I was editing this book, and I went to go and look for a reference that a character would make. Gabriel, the character Gabriel in the book, who's actually my cousin Gabriel, my real life cousin Gabriel. And as I was researching, I think I wanted to explain a little bit about a song. And then I read the entire story of how they came about the title, the song and the title for Easy Motion Tory. So apparently, when they used to do Pangolo music, Pangolo music, hobby musicians, these young guys, but once in a while they'll get called to a gig. They'll get a proper gig, right? The gigs then were, so their own Pangolo music, you're playing in your Isaleko or whatever, in campus, and your people are, at a bear parlor or whatever. You're just having fun with the kids.
And let me sing the song. There's Onido to Onimo.
I have to listen to that tonight. I'm so going to have to play that tonight. Yeah. So once in a while, they'll get called to like an event or something. Someone's naming ceremony, someone's party. So that night, they had all gone out. In one of them had a bus or whatever, and they done this gig, and then they're coming back home. I'm not saying it precisely as it is. I can't remember exactly how, but as they're coming back home, Teju, I can't remember who actually wrote the story, or the story is about, I think, got back to his house. They were dropping him off, and the gate had been locked. So he had to jump the fence to get into his own compound. And it was that story, when they all met up the next day, they were talking about it, that they locked the cow of the house, out of the house. May they never lock us out, and they just got the melody, and the song came, from a misadventure, from a nocturnal misadventure. And then I thought, actually, this whole book is about adventure gone wrong for some people.
Exactly. Oh, and that's so interesting. It was almost like a happy accident.
Yeah, I wanted to infuse African music into the book anyway. So I wanted to, there's a part where I had Gabriel talking about music, right? I think a lot of this did not make the final cut because it was forced. I wanted to talk about high life, I wanted to talk about from Bobby Benson to early to to Swing Popo, young people, to the guy who wrote the original Ambrose Campbell. Ambrose Campbell, who formed the first black band in the UK, whose song, I beg people to go and listen to it. I don't know if the Beatles stole from him or he stole from the Beatles, but if you go and listen to Any Ring Koe by Ambrose Campbell, is on YouTube. He just, at the end, he just has this guitar riff. Dun, 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 and then he hums to it. It gives me goosebumps when I listen to this. So I wanted to talk about these things, I love high life.
But I think you also raised a very interesting point in terms of growing up in Nigeria, Ibadan, Lagos influences, living in the diaspora, writing from the diaspora, about those places that have definitely influenced your worldview?
Mm.
What are the challenges you face? You talked about, the publisher, thinking about people from other cultures not being aligned with that culture. How do you, how often does that happen? How do you overcome that challenge as a writer writing from the diaspora, but also knowing that you're writing for a global audience? And I also think about it from your case where you've actually openly admitted that your very first audience that you wrote for was a Facebook group. Has
Yeah,
your
my friend.
perspective of audience changed since then? Do you find yourself having to compromise so that, okay, these people will not know Bobby Benson, so you understand? Do you find yourself in those sorts of back and forth with the publishers, or even internally with yourself when you're writing, thinking about the audience?
I would say that I owe a lot of thanks. I'm very grateful to Afrobeat stars, all of them, right? Right from before they coined the term Afrobeats. What they did is they demonstrated something that my brothers, my elder brother Wale always said this, that why Nigerians, when we're younger and we had people trying to do reggae and rap till walk, we used to
Rap till walk.
and I was like, why are you trying to copy other people?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
people want original stuff. Be original. Which is why I've always preferred, high life and I would rather listen to people then like Bobby Benson or even Oliver de Cook.
No, Victor Waifu. Yeah. If you see Mami Water,
Victor Waifu.
Yeah. That's authentic music, and that's original. That's us being ourselves and not copying other people.
You're not trying to copy anyone. And if you look at from Whiskey to Ira Star to Omo Baba Olowo to Baba to Thames, them, they are unapologetically themselves. Ashake does not do, I'm trying to bend myself for anyone. Ashake does Fuji.
And that's what he is, and he's accepted for it widely. Speaking about authenticity, I like one of the things that I grew up reading, and I've seen that you posted on social media that you grew up reading the Pace Setters series. And I always like to say that they are the unsung heroes of the African literary world. Like you, I also grew up reading the books, and I had a goal to complete the entire collection. I didn't manage to accomplish that. And I know one of those reasons was that the book market in Nigeria, the rest of Africa, it's a perennial social problem. I don't think we have enough time to talk about that. But
let me give you book envy. Go on.
Please give me book envy. my audience is not going. Do you have all of them?
No. I'm still trying to get them. Someone wanted to sell me one.
I don't even have one anymore. Since I left Nigeria, and I keep asking people, where do you get yours from?
Do I want to share my sources?
Okay, we will share it while we're recording. But then the thing,
Amazon.
No, but Amazon, you see them priced for a ridiculous amount of money.
I know. I've had to buy some. There's one I'm looking for what's it called? Bloodbath at Lobster Close.
Oh my goodness! Yes, Bloodbath for Mbaka and Rabata, and
those ones I've tried to buy them. I've been given offers that at the time I wasn't very liquid. If they had caught me at a time when I had Owo Shinolowo.
No, but I think this is using this medium of this podcast series to let the publishers know, because I think the reason why they're so prohibitively expensive is because they're out of print. Why are they out of print? It's a huge question. I think Macmillan is the publisher. Why aren't they making them accessible, especially for the next generation? Our generation read them, the generation afterwards, because I feel that there is so much authenticity in the stories that are being told through those. I mean, even the writers, I think, did not even get the recognition that they deserved on the continent. The other day I read that Agbo Ario had passed away, and I was like, oh my goodness, how did we not celebrate
the first?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but do you remember when you first encountered them, the Pacesetter series?
I can't remember. I only remember exchanging Pacesetters in school.
Exactly. Same here. Secondary school. Yeah.
In those days, we just read whatever we got.
Yeah, the days of innocence.
I used to read a lot of News and Boons.
Oh my goodness, I'm glad that you can openly admit that. Thank you.
Why not? I used to read a lot of them because you just read the things you got,
and I think it's not so much, it's I guess for you, it's more the written word, just being able to digest it, understand it, consume it. I wanted to go back to your books one more time and just ask, because it's something that's been on my mind. Who is responsible for the unique and iconic artwork that distinguishes the book cover?
Salu. Salu. What's his first name? I want to say Michael Salu. Let me just check.
Shout out to Michael Salu.
I hope it is. Is amazing.
Oh wow! And it's actually quite very unique, very distinguished.
Yeah,
very
I think it's Michael Salu.
Okay, well, shout out to Michael Salu. Our time together is coming to an end, and I have a few more questions. One question, especially given the nature of this podcast, because I'm talking to people writing from the diaspora, how easy or difficult is it to write about Lagos when you're living outside of the city? You're in London with snow on the ground and things like that, and then you now need to bring that tropical vibe and describe, do you write in Lagos? I've heard some people actually have to physically remove themselves from wherever they are in the West in order to write about home. Do you have to do that, or do you?
No. I've lost the manuscript now, but the first complete manuscript I ever wrote in longhand, I wrote just before I entered uni, and I just read The Famished Road.
Okay.
Ben Okri. So I wrote this novel, Alarinka, Wanderer, and it was set in the same kind of world and everything. But I wasn't writing about the Nigeria of then. It was an ancient time that had never been, I wasn't born then, pre-colonial, slavery, and all of that. When life was a beautiful thing for Africans. And I was writing about that period. I've never been in that period. I have a speculative fiction novel called The Beautiful Side of the Moon. I've never been to the moon. With Lagos, because as an adult, I went and I was a businessman in Lagos. One nom in passion.
Hey,
man, one nom in passion. One fair $1 Mississippi. So doing business in Lagos, I learned the hard way that, dude, it's not for the faint-hearted. It's a different ball game. But then I met some of the most amazing human beings, my mentors. I had all these mentors, some invested in the business, some just took, a liking to what myself and these other young people were doing. And they just supported us with their time, their money, their goodwill. So I met some extremely decent people. All the people that invested in the business, amazing human beings. But then we faced problem with government. But anyway, that period was such a traumatic period for me. Bittersweet period. Lost everything. I didn't tell my partner, who later became my wife, that I was accumulating debt. I had remortgaged my property to the hilt to pay salaries, in Nigeria. I'd taken out loans to pay salaries. because I believed in what we were doing. But then it was such a traumatic time for me where I'd left my job in England in IT to go and start a business in Nigeria.
Mhm.
And then I basically spent 5 years losing who was then the love of my life, because we married in that period, but I was still in Nigeria. So I messed that up. Lost a whole ton of money, went into extreme debt
Mhm.
that took years to get out of.
Mhm.
Was too ashamed to hang out with my friends. So I lost friendships, not their fault, but because, everybody knew when Leye went to go and start this thing and knew about this thing.
Mhm.
And then I come back, not only have I lost the business,
Mhm.
I am way behind all of you that I left behind. And most of all, I have lost my marriage to this amazing woman who's also friends with a lot of you, who's schoolmates with a lot of you. So it was, and I was still one of those Nigerians that would be like, therapy called therapy knee.
Mm.
I'd not become a coach then. I didn't
Mm.
know that
Mm.
this is secret weapon, ikini,
Yeah.
So I had to deal with it by myself. And out of that trauma were born two things. I reconnected with my passion for writing. The first thing I did was I started publishing those, chapters of what became Easy Motion Tourist. When I was done with that, I thought, let me do something else. I created a satire website. People don't know it was me, called Wazobia Reports.
Mm.
Started writing satire, political satire, because it was a politically charged period. And I thought, I need to get involved, but I didn't want to be labeled one of those, oh, you're a way person, what do you know about it? So I thought, well, let's use satire. Political, I almost got into trouble once. So I wrote a story, I posted it, I woke up the next day, the thing had blown up, right? Yeah, it was trending before trending was a word. And the government responded to it. The story was, on this, Wazobia Report was like a fake newspaper. But we put a caveat at the bottom that this is just this satire, this is not real news. For real news, please go to SaharaReporters.com.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'd written a story where it was in a letter format. Heading was in Okojo-Iweala quits after Okonjo-Iweala quits after reviewing the national accounts or something like that. So I wrote it as a letter in first person, like Okonjo is saying to the government that, thank you for this amazing opportunity you gave me, but after I've looked at your accounts and everything, amount of economics or anything, is only God can do this one. So the government took it seriously. It was in a paper. I read online that they actually replied to it saying that these are the distractors of the government. This like that. I'm like, God damn, like shit! Don't you recognize satire?
No,
Even
they
if you don't, can't you see it? But so I started doing that, and then friends would stop me and ask about, I'd run into friends. I was always working in the city then. I would run into friends who'd read the stories, the chapters on Facebook, and they'll be like, dude, when are you continuing that series?
Oh.
A very good friend, Onyikorotimi, we would normally pass each other once in a while, going to work in the morning. And this morning she said to me, Leye, are you going to publish that story? Listen, if you want to publish it, let me be your agent.
Oh.
She said it with just enough seriousness for it to stick with me, like, dude, just rewrite it, just sort it out. So I did that. But the story itself is based on, or the entire book is based on experiences I've had, on places I know. My father's advice never left me. Write about things you know of.
You know.
But then because I've mastered in my own way, up to now, I'm still learning how to write about things I know of. I've then learned that what I do know is the human condition. And the human condition can be in any place, any time, any period. And there's a very important tool that I really embraced very early, because I didn't go to school for writing. I didn't do a course in writing. I bought books. I read ferociously all the books I could find on writing until now that I've distilled it to two that I always recommend. I even give out copies. I'm trying to see if I have one here. How to Write a Damn Good Novel by Stephen N. Frey, and Elements of Style by Strunk. That thing, those two books will get you going, right? I always advise all the books I've read, though. Some are this big. A very dear friend, I'm going to call his name, Peter Lawson. When I was writing, I didn't have a publisher. I didn't have anything. When I was doing those, he bought me books on writing. I didn't ask him. He just bought them.
Wow.
He just using.
I need friends like that in their life. That are supportive just because they believe in what you're doing and they see it before you see it.
Using Christian language is sowed into my life.
I've been sowed into your life. And so I guess that also, you know, having lived there made it easy for you to write about.
Yes.
But would you say that there's been a difference between the way your book has been received by Nigerians and non-Nigerian readers, particularly?
No. People ask me sometimes, oh, you portray Nigeria in such a negative, portray Lagos in such a negative light, but not one person in Lagos has ever said to me, how dare you? The only thing I hear is, wow, when I was reading this, I knew this person lived in Lagos. I'm like, yeah, of course I lived in Lagos. But here's the thing, Lagos that I lived in then was BlackBerry Lagos. It wasn't iPhone Lagos. You know, every time I go back to Lagos, there's a new building somewhere. A whole street looks different, right?
A new neighborhood even.
The clubs are different. The vibe is different. Everything is different. So how do I write about modern Lagos? That's a challenge. Well, I go back often enough. I have friends who are Lagosians. You can be part of something even from afar. You can have, feel the spirit of it and live the spirit of it. And if all else fails, Google is your friend. You know.
Would you say that living outside of Nigeria has impacted your perspective as a writer?
Probably in ways even I am not aware of. I mean, I'm writing a new crime series now, called the Bad Coach series. Which is set in London. Bad Coach because the main character, Babatunde Bobby Fatokun. Right? Bobby Fatokun is again, this is named after a friend of mine, Fatokun, who is a coach as well. But Bobby Fatokun is a coach, like an executive coach, you know, but he has a gig working for the Metropolitan Police, where they send the bad eggs to him. Officers who've had a little bit of
need an internal
excessive use of force. They need help with learning to work with women. The unconscious bias. So their sins are not so bad that you've not killed a woman like this police cop was killing women in the UK. You've not committed a sexual crime. You've not gone and battered someone. You've not planted evidence. So it's none of those. So your offense is not criminal, but your behavior is a bit
questionable.
So some of them, I made this up. I don't know if this really happens. So some people like that is a bit gray. They'll then send you to Bobby, who's an external coach, but works, he has a contract with the Mets. And Bobby will then help them to become aware of their unconscious bias, become aware of the misogyny, become aware of the things that they're not aware of. And then at the end of the coaching session, Bobby would then say to their superior, without revealing anything about the content of the coaching, either I am confident of their ability to continue in their role, or I propose or I suggest they get further help, which is just, a way of saying, keep
I have two questions from that. So,
yeah.
When should we expect that?
Well, we're working on it very soon, very soon. I've written the first book. I'm working on the second book in the series.
Okay.
So basically what happens is, because he works with these officers, right? So after he's worked with them to get over whatever problem has brought them to him, some of them, when they've experienced coaching for the first time, and how coaching is not about someone telling you what to do, but you working with you to find your way, they come back. Sometimes for personal development, like, oh, actually, Bobby, I want to get a promotion, or I'm thinking of what to do next, or my retirement is coming up. But sometimes I'm working a difficult case and I need help with coaching. Now, maybe because he's coached them and it's an intimate relationship when you coach someone, or because he used to be a policeman in Nigeria himself, but they come to him with these cases, and obviously somehow he gets entangled with the cases. So the first book done, second book I'm currently writing on now. I'm currently working on now.
I'm excited to read it. The second question, does this mean, we have 3 Amaka series. Are we done with Amaka?
Oh, no. Amaka, I already have 8 books planned for Amaka.
Whoa!
I have 8 books planned.
Okay.
There's a 4th book that's already written.
Okay, good.
Already written. That's done.
Okay.
I need to go back to that and brush it up. Then for over not last year, the year before, I started another one.
Okay. Oh, good.
So yeah, it's coming. It will come back. I love those books so much that even if I'm going to give them out for free, I'll still write them.
Yeah, it's clear that even in reading them, you can see the passion shine through.
Yeah.
When we started our conversation, I introduced you as writer, coach, and human being. But one thing that is not widely publicized is that you're also an actor. And I read somewhere that you performed in a production of Olarotimi's Our Husband Has Gone Mad Again.
Yeah, I was what was I again? I was, funny enough, I was offered the lead role,
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, I was offered the lead role, and then I got the script, and the script was the book, the play itself. Yeah. So it wasn't cut short, it wasn't altered. It was Olarotimi's play, and the director was the kind of, you do it by, So I read and I'm like, dude, man, this is not my day job.
I don't want your audience to walk out after the first scene.
No, I cannot cram all these lines, man.
Because
you had to be on point. So I took the supporting role.
Okay, good.
That was amazing fun. I actually shot a thriller, a scene in a thriller this weekend.
Oh, do we get to see it?
Well, I don't know yet. I'm not sure if I should be talking about it. Okay. Well, he's tweeted it. My friend, my oft misunderstood, always well-intentioned, massively prolific friend, Onye Kanwelu, is doing a thriller.
Okay.
And so yeah, he asked if I could play myself.
Oh, wow! So you have a cameo?
No, I don't. He asked if I could play myself, so I went in to play myself, and I was supposed to be talking to a chief. It was a scene with another person, the chief. But when I got there, the director looked at me with my, gray hair, looked at the chief with his youthfulness. I was like, really? So I ended up playing the chief. Oh. And this dashing young man played me. Oh. And yeah, and we shot the scene at Pitanga.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Inky's restaurant. Yeah.
Okay.
So we shot it at Pitanga. It was a fun day. You know, I ate some salad. Oh,
Please. Okay, wait. No. Unfortunately, our time together is coming to an end, and I'm really enjoying our conversation. But one of the things I'm asking all of my guests is, what do you miss the most about Nigeria?
Authentic suya.
It's always the food.
Authentic suya. I mean, the amala. I get amala from Mama Lolak. I get ayamashe from Tommy's Kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
I cook the best jollof rice. You know, people swear by my jollof rice. You know,
I'm going to put that. Next time I'm in London, I'm coming to your house to have you.
Oh no,
Is
you
it
would
smoky kind?
without Maggie.
What do you now use?
Leave it alone.
Okay,
Maggie
all
is
right. Don't tell us your secret ingredient so that
I cook the most amazing one, and I've been experimenting with suya for so long with a lot of spices and everything.
Mhm.
Then I tried to make my own spice. The first experiment was abject failure, and I finally cracked it.
Good for you.
I finally cracked it. And if there's anyone out there who's trying to make suya by themselves, first get sirloin, cut into suya shape. That's the best. You won't get a hump. You won't get the yaji that is the real suya meat. Get sirloin steak, sliced into bits. And then whatever recipe you're using, make sure you have for every teaspoon of everything else, from your ginger to your black pepper, make sure there's a teaspoon of white pepper as well. Very important. Make sure you use about 3 teaspoons of hot cayenne pepper, and then make sure you use more than a cup of ground peanuts.
I see I can hear some of my listeners taking notes. This is good stuff.
It's when you mix it, it smells like suya. And that's the trick. And then the trick also is how you cook it. So you make sure you do your salt and oil mix and mash it up. Then do not, when you put the suya paste, be generous with it. Be generous with it and keep it for overnight. Don't be in a hurry. Keep it overnight and then make sure you smell it. Well, I knew I was onto something when I started smelling suya from my oven. I'm like, you got it.
You got it. No, but I can relate, because as someone who has lived abroad for longer than I thought I would, I know that the when it comes to getting authentic suya, the struggle is real, because sometimes you just get people that just put this dry piece of meat in front of you and they say it's suya, and you'll be eating it and you just feel like crying, because you're like, this is why, you know, moving away from Nigeria sometimes can be a bit of a hardship when it comes to the tongue. Yes, exactly.
Tell me about it. There's a guy that makes very authentic suya in Peckham. I've forgotten his name, my friend. On the same road, Comet Road, as Mama Lolak, is at the top of the road. His suya tastes like Levante suya. If anybody grew up in Ibadan.
Yeah, of course.
Oh man, god damn.
All right, let's not torture ourselves more than we need to. Thank you so much for your time today, Leye.
Thank you for having me.
Such a pleasure. I really enjoyed our conversation. And please let us know when that trailer comes out. Please, on social. I want to see who's playing you. Enjoy.
I like the guy.
Enjoy the rest of the week, the year, and we'll be in touch. Take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
To come from a royal storytelling background and make the most of it, how marvelous is that? Thank you for listening. On the next episode of Tokunbo.
But the greater understanding was from the foundational roots that I had, that the UK is so lucky to have me.
My dream was always to go back and to establish myself in Nigeria, be a lawyer in Nigeria, and all of that.